Kind is not a virtue, but clarity, courage, and charity, those are. Welcome to the Catholic Couch, the official audio podcast of the Catholic Counseling Institute. I'm Amber Pilkington, Catholic therapist, wife, and mother. Around here, we talk about real issues with real faith, blending the wisdom of the Catholic Church with the best of psychology, so you can find clarity, peace, and purpose in your relationships, your vocation, and everyday life. Whether you're folding laundry or driving the carpool, pull up a seat and let's go. If you've ever been told to smile, be nice, keep the peace, this episode's for you. Because kind is not a virtue, but clarity, courage, and charity, those are. And today, we're letting St. Catherine of Siena show us what holy assertiveness looks like. Welcome to the Catholic Couch, the official podcast of the Catholic Counseling Institute. I'm Amber Pilkington, Catholic therapist, wife, mother, and woman who's done confusing being nice with being holy. And finally, learning the difference. Let's start with this. Kindness is beautiful. We all want to be kind, but kindness is not one of those theological virtues. The virtues that lead us to heaven, according to the Catechism, are faith, hope, and love. Paragraph 1813 for those following along. Charity is love, and love doesn't always look nice. Sometimes love looks like clear boundaries, like correction, like telling the truth even when it costs you, just like St. Catherine of Siena. Catherine lived in the 14th century and was born into a large Italian family. She was deeply mystical, fiercely to Christ, and one of the most outspoken voices of her time. So much so that she told a pope to return to Rome and reform the church. And guess what? He listened. She was canonized a saint, declared a doctor of the church, and is now the patroness of Europe and Italy. But nice isn't the first word I'd use to describe her. Bold? Yes. Clear? Yes. Humble? Absolutely. But people pleaser? Not even close. In psychology, we talk about 3 basic communication styles: passive, aggressive, and assertive. Passive means that you don't speak out. You stay silent and avoid conflict, even when something needs to be said. Aggressive means you speak in a way that dominates or disrespects others. When we put these together, the passive-aggressive is when we let our actions speak for our words. So instead of saying what we mean, we're aggressive in emotional ways, like putting your husband's favorite coffee cup just a little bit higher and harder to get. Assertive means you express your thoughts, feelings, and needs clearly and respectfully. Assertiveness isn't pride, it's not selfishness, it's clarity with compassion. And here's the thing, many Catholic women confuse passivity with virtue. We think that if we say no, then we're being selfish. If we speak up, we're being disobedient or improperly masculine. If we disappoint someone, then we must be sinning. But often, we are not sinning. We're just finally telling the truth. And that is not selfish. It's integrity. In fact, research shows that people who struggle with people-pleasing often develop something called the Fawn Response, which was first talked about by Herman in 1992. Link in the show notes. That's a trauma-based survival strategy where instead of fighting or fleeing, we appease. We make ourselves invisible, agreeable, small, so that we can stay safe. But the gospel doesn't ask you to be small or disappear. It asks you to love. And love, as we'll see in St. Catherine's story, sometimes roars. Let's talk about the woman who would have blown up the group chat in every Catholic mom's group she ever joined. St. Catherine of Siena. Catherine was born in 1347, right in the middle of the Black Death. And if that alone doesn't give you grit, I don't know what does. She was the 25th out of 26 children. Yes, 26. She lived in a crowded house in a time of war and plague and decided early on that she was not there to play small. She had mystical visions as a child. By the age of 16, she had dedicated herself entirely to Christ. And by her 20s, she was writing bold, passionate letters to priests, nobles, and yes, even the Pope. Imagine being a teenage woman with no formal education writing, "Holy Father, your silence is rotting the church. Do something." That is the spiritual equivalent of walking into the Vatican with a clipboard and a whistle. Here's one of her most famous quotes. Maybe you've heard it on a coffee mug. Be who God meant you to be, and you will set the world on fire. But we forget what comes before that fire. It's usually saying something someone doesn't want to hear. In one of her actual letters to Pope Gregory XI, she wrote, "Proclaim the truth and do not be silent through fear." That line rattled me the first time I read it because how often do we stay silent? Not out of holiness, but out of fear. Fear of rejection, fear of being seen as difficult, fear of being called mean or too much. And you know what? Catherine was too much for her time, but she was never too much for God, and that is the difference. She spoke boldly, not to control, but to love, not to elevate herself, but to obey. Her assertiveness was not about her own ego. It was about mission. And if you've ever bit your tongue when something needed to be said or said yes to something while your insides were screaming no, then you're not alone. But you also don't have to live that way. Here's the truth. Being nice is often about protecting our image. Yikes, that one bites. Being virtuous is about protecting your soul. And sometimes protecting your soul means stepping away from things God didn't ask of you in the first place. Okay, now let's bridge this into the practical, because boldness is beautiful, but clarity without tools can still leave us tongue-tied. So let me give you one of my favorite therapy tools that I teach people all the time and use often in my own life. It's called Dear Man. And no, it's not a charming guy with a beard and a theology degree. It is a dialectical behavioral therapy skill that is an acronym, and it helps you remember how to be assertive while maintaining respect for yourself and others. And here's how it breaks down. Dear Man, assertiveness framework. The D stands for describe the situation objectively. I notice that I'm the only one who's been asked to lead the parish brunch 3 years in a row. E, express your feelings. I feel overwhelmed and a bit burnt out. A, assert your need clearly. I'd like to step back this year and let someone else take the lead. R, reinforce the relationship or the outcome. I still want to be involved, just not to take the lead. And I hope you understand. So that's the dear, and here's the man. The M stands for mindful. Stay on point. Don't get distracted by guilt and don't feel the need to over-explain. A, appear confident. Speak with conviction, not apology. This is one of those fake it till you make it moments. N, negotiate. Be open to dialogue, but stay rooted in your needs. See how that sounds? Respectful, adult, clear. Catherine would be proud. She didn't yell or manipulate. She didn't shut down or ghost people. She engaged directly and spiritually. And this isn't just a skill for parish life. This is for marriages, motherhood, ministry. You can love someone deeply and still say, I won't do that. You can serve the church and still say, I'm not available for that right now. You can be holy and still have needs. One of my favorite moments with clients is when they realize that setting boundaries doesn't make them selfish, it makes them clear. Because Jesus says, let your yes mean yes and your no mean no. Matthew 5:37. He didn't say, let your yes mean maybe and your no mean probably unless they push you harder. And here's the kicker. Assertiveness isn't about getting what you want. It's about showing up honestly in a relationship with yourself, with others, and with God. All right, let's bring this home. If there's one thing I want you to take from this today, it is clarity is not unkind. And kindness without clarity can quietly destroy your peace. You are allowed to say what you need. You're allowed to step back when you're exhausted. You're allowed to have preferences. That doesn't make you selfish. It makes you honest. Assertiveness, when practiced in love, is not a violation of charity. It's often the beginning of it. So light a candle, grab your journal, and take 5 minutes to reflect on this. Unless, of course, you're driving. Where have I mistaken passivity for holiness? Is there a conversation I've been avoiding because I'm afraid of being perceived as not nice? What would change if I told the truth with clarity and love? What would St. Catherine say to me right now? What is the one thing I need to say clearly and kindly this week? And then try this sentence. Because I value our relationship, I want to be honest about where I'm at. Despite this sentence ending in a preposition, it can actually open doors to conversations that you've been dreading. And when you pair it with courage, humility, and prayer, you're walking in the footsteps of saints. Remember, boldness does not mean bulldozing. It means being anchored in Christ enough to stop apologizing for your God-given voice. If this has helped you, please do all the things, the likes, subscribes, the shares. It really does help. It lets people who don't know that we're here hear more about us. It allows the algorithm to suggest us to people who search for similar things. Stay tuned for our next episodes. And if you have any suggestions of topics or questions, please leave them in the comments. I read every one, and that helps us decide what kind of topics and episodes we're going to make. You don't have to choose between being faithful and being honest. And remember, there is always a place for you, all of you, on the Catholic Couch.